Hello and welcome to Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. Tune into this podcast to get the latest news on competitive shooting events and to learn how to become a better shooter. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to recommend it to all of your shooting friends. Hello and welcome to episode 11. I'm Dan Kello along with Joseph Stacker, and we're here today to go over some ARA score updates. Our straight shooting video today, we're going to have one released on setting up for Benchrest, how you actually get your bench set up, set your rest, set your stool, set your stands, and all of that. Going to go over how I like to do that and why. Got precision shots. We're going to go over Rimfire Benchrest actions, the ins and outs of the actions, the various actions that have been around over the years, what factory actions are out there, what custom actions are out there. And we're going to finish up with bleeding off with Joseph as he looks ahead to the Oklahoma sectional, the USPSA match in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Arcadia.
It's in Arcadia, but it's in the Oklahoma City Gun Club, I believe, right outside of Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And we also want to remind you that we have our website, Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. You can go there and get all of our information, see where all you can listen to us or watch the YouTube videos or any of the diagrams of our 4-for-core drills, any of that kind of information. Go to the website, straightshootingwithdanandjoseph.com. All right, some ARA updates. Getting matches rolling. June 13th out at Green Sea in South Carolina had their club tournament. Tom Mix was third, John Mix was second, and Sam Wells won that one. Good shooting, Sam. Congratulations. More club tournaments. Oklahoma City, or Oklahoma Capital, not Oklahoma Capital, Oil Capital Rod and Gun Club. That's over closer to Tulsa. Richard Gorham was third. Second was Frank McMullen. Jim Moorhead won. That was their club tournament. Over in Kentucky at the Paducah Shooting Sports Complex, Todd Earhart was third. Trent Schellebarger was second. And G.P. Baird, Gus Baird, was the winner on that tournament. Congratulations, Gus. Oak Hills Gun Club up in Iowa. Cecil Peterson was third, Ron Elby was second, and Scott Alberry was the winner of their club tournament up in Iowa. Club tournament in Indiana, the Butch Lynn Memorial at Marion County Fish and Game. This is all ARA stuff. Third place, John Carper. Second, David Petty. And your winner, Mike Sherrill. Big dog, Mike. Minnesota, Minnetonka Sportsman's Club had state tournament for Minnesota. Dean Boyer was third, Dale Quast was second, and Ralph Schultz was the winner of the Minnesota State Tournament. Good shooting, Ralph. And that's going to about wrap it up for the major matches that have been completed. We got Chickenfoot's got a club tournament coming up in Georgia, Cedartown, Georgia on the 20th. Looks like New Mexico, Zia Rifle and Pistol on the 20th, going to have a club tournament. Wisconsin up in Van Dyne Sportsman's Club. Paul that works with us is going to be running the Area 4 tournament. Our very first area ARA tournament. That's Area 4 on Saturday. He's also going to be doing some ammo testing and stuff on Friday up at Van Dyne Sportsman's Club in Wisconsin. Get a hold of Paul, get more information on that. Caldwell County Sportsman's Club, June 20th, is going to have a tournament in Kentucky. Another tournament in, Van Dyne's going to have another tournament on Sunday, so double tournament Saturday and Sunday. North Carolina, Rocky River Barn Outdoor on the 27th. That's in Albemarle, North Carolina. And out in California, Open Grove in Oxnard is going to have their club tournament. So North Texas Shooters Association is going to have a Texas State Tournament June 27th. And Indiana, Wabash Wildlife and Sportsmen's Association State Tournament on June 28th. Then North Texas Shooters are going to have another tournament on Sunday. So double tournament there, state, and then club tournament. So lots of ARA matches going on. And be sure to go to AmericanRimfire.com to see those. Don't forget you got your ABRA, your USPSA stuff going on now, NRL 22, which we're getting ready to head out. Joseph's living the dream. Leaving out Thursday for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Go to the USPSA sectional. Going to be there Thursday, Friday. Come home or shoot Saturday. Just shoot Saturday, right?
We actually shoot Friday.
Okay.
But the main, they have, it's Friday and Saturday shoot. Will be done Sunday. and then we'll head home. I'll be home Sunday night, and then me and you leave.
Be on Saturday night.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know how long it takes to get there. It's
It
not
shouldn't be
super long, but
Yeah, I think it's like 5 or 6 hours.
yeah.
And then we're leaving Sunday morning for Utah, going
Yep.
to Murray, Utah. Going to be doing some Ely mobile testing in Murray, Utah at TNT gun range. If you're in the Utah area, come by and see us. And then that weekend, we will have the Ely Rocky Mountain Regional NRL 22 match. Jim Cannon and his team's got that going. Going to be set for June 27th. We'll be out there. So NRL 22 on the West Coast, they're expecting a good turnout, 90 to 100 competitors. We'll be there set up and doing our thing. We're also that one. Don't forget, take the stuff. We're going to get Jim Cannon and record a podcast and do a little more NRL 22 follow-up with him.
There, like a remote thing?
Yes, we'll do a remote.
Cool.
So looking forward to doing that. All right, moving on to our straight shooting challenge video. Normally we do a video with some kind of straight shooting challenge. This time we did a video of me setting up my bench. Mark Self down in South Texas hit me up with a good question about how I like to set up my bench for Benchrest, Rimfire Benchrest, and how I like to set up my flag. So I said, well, I'll just do a video and we'll talk about it a little bit on the podcast and go over that, because I'm sure there's lots of people that have that kind of same question out there.
We were just talking about him. Oscar, the guy that tested this morning, he Mark puts on, I don't know if it's an NRL, it's one of those style matches.
Yes,
and
he puts on a lot of matches down in South Texas.
Oscar said that he puts on some really good matches.
I have to get down there and see them and see that range. They're going to start doing some ARA down there as well, so they don't have an extensive Benchrest background, and he had several questions. So the first thing I do, and a lot of people, it's kind of strange, a lot of people think, or a lot of people ask me about, is, of course, I'm tall and I'm real long-waisted. Well, I see a lot of guys, and if you're comfortable doing this, there's nothing wrong with it. But if they're just all hunched over their rifle, I like to get my seat really low to the ground so I can keep my back straight. And to me, it's just a comfort thing. If I'm all hunched over, by the end of the day, my back's killing me between my shoulders and everything. So I'm literally my butt's probably 12 inches off the ground by the time I get it down.
Well, for bench rest, you don't have to be right up on the rifle, you know. And most guys don't do that anyway. Like some guys, you know, it's not even shouldered hardly. There's a little bit of pressure on the stock.
Some of them do a little bit of shoulder pressure. Some of them will do. They'll pinch the trigger to where they'll put their thumb on the back of the trigger guard.
Yeah,
and pull. I don't even do that. I do completely free recoil. I've got a one-piece rest, the joystick rest by PQP is what I like to use, with their fuzz button top, and it'll recoil back a couple inches, inch and a half, 2 inches, I guess. So I just free recoil, and I sit up straight. I move the rest as far forward on the bench as I can and as far to the left as I can. Matter of fact, the rest that I use has 3 feet, 2 in the front and 1 in the rear. And most of those benches are cut out like a T, so I slide that over to where the back half of the rest is hanging off the edge of the bench.
Well, you have a little bit of an offset from the front, since there's only 1 foot on the back. It like tapers down, and so if it's I know what you're talking about. Like, so here's the edge of the bench. Your foot, or that front foot, is right here, and so at some point when the bench also tapers, it'll actually hang over the side.
Yep. Because the rear leg on the rest is in the middle of the rest, and so I have it all the way to the very edge. So everything to the left of that foot on the rear side of the rest is hanging off of the bench. And I do that to get up to me again, so I don't have to lean forward and hurt my back. And it's just more comfortable for me to do that. And I just look straight over, reach my right arm around. I'm making sure, and I'm ultra conscious about me not contacting the stock at all. I might have just a little bit of cheek on the stock, but very, very little. And then I slowly pull the trigger. And I don't pinch it. I just pull it. It's 2 ounce or less trigger. So it doesn't take much to put it on. I just put it right on the very bottom tip of the trigger shoe. pull the trigger. I move it as far forward on the bench as well, and I want to get as close to the target as I can.
Yeah.
So I mean, even I know it's maybe just 2 inches, but still I'm 2 inches closer, and those are what the rules allow. Now, some guys I've seen like to sit directly behind, and so they actually move the rest all the way back and in the center of the bench, and they'll sit straight behind it, just like I'm sitting right here now, straddled to this table. So if you're listening, if you don't see, get on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph, and you can see what I'm talking about. But basically, I'm straddled this table, and they'll just straddle that bench and look right straight ahead, and they're free recoiling too, and they just look right through the scope straight ahead and pull. That's what I do. I like to put my clock by my left front foot, so I have my timer there. Then I'll have, usually there's just enough bench up towards the front of my rest that I can put a couple of boxes of ammo, and then I'll have a third box of ammo that's just for my fowlers that I'll use to just warm up my gun, and that's usually leftover ammo. It'll be Ely, but it's not my number one lot. I do not want to shoot my number one lot up just simply fouling and warming up my gun. So I'll have an extra box of that because I'm going to foul my gun 5 to 10 shots before I start the target, because I have cleaned it between every target. And then I'll have 2 full boxes of ammo there when I start.
Are you, I guess I haven't paid that much attention whenever you shoot, but some guys, they'll line it up and then they'll completely take their sight out of the scope and just watch the flags.
Yes.
Do you look through your scope whenever you're making the shot, or does it depend on how windy it is or how much you're having to watch your flags? I can't do that, but
right.
I also shoot with both eyes open, and
yeah.
so you can see the target through the scope and the wind flags at the same time.
I personally shoot with both eyes open while I'm looking through the scope. I've tried to do that, and a lot of guys will do that, and you can do this with a one-piece rest. You're looking for a certain wind condition, and you know what hold-off you need. So they'll get lined up to that hold-off and get everything set, put their finger on the trigger, and then just sit up and watch the flags. And when the flags get exactly like they want, then they fire, then they look down in the scope and see where it hits.
Yeah.
I just can't make myself do that because I just gotta
you gotta know where it's going.
I gotta see where it's going. I don't know. I can't get that out of my just built into me. Look where you're shooting. And okay, the other thing I'll do is I'll usually fold up a couple of towels to rest my right elbow on. When you're shooting all day and everything, a lot of times that bench, being concrete tops in most places, really wears on your right elbow, and it always seems to hit me right in that funny bone spot. So maybe I'm kind of a weenie or something, I don't know. But anyway, I'll have a padding that I'll rest my right elbow on so that when I'm around that gun to pull the trigger, I've got a rest for my elbow, and then the PQP rest has a hand rest as well, so I can sit there and wait for my wind condition before I shoot.
Do you use that, or are you
yes.
just kind of finagled around to where you're only touching the trigger?
No, I mean, I'm only touching the trigger on the gun, but I do place my hand on that hand rest. Some people don't like to do that because you are putting a little bit of weight on the rest, and it'll kind of flex some of them. PQP, I have not found it to be a problem. I'm shooting a right bolt, left port, so then I'll fire. As soon as I fire, lay my thumb on my right hand across the back of the stock, use my fingers then to lift the bolt and slide the bolt back, and then I'm loading with my left hand, putting it in there with the left port sitting on the left side of the gun. I'm able to see in there, load it right straight in. I go ahead and push it into the barrel. Some people will lay it down on the loading ramp and use the bolt to push it forward. I like to go ahead and just quickly stick it into the barrel. I don't necessarily stick it all the way in, but I'll stick it majority of the way in and then let the bolt finish it. My preference is just to do that just so I can make sure it goes in straight. Nothing is getting shaved off by accidentally going in not straight.
Yeah.
And damaging the bullet or taking some lube off or anything like that. I just want to do that, just part of a little bit of my OCD that I turn into there. All right, so I've got that there. I've got my clock there so I can see it as time is counting down. I always have my ammo box still pretty close. I typically have 2 boxes of ammo up there. I have on occasion, not very often, shot more than actually 2 boxes on one target. And I know there's only 25 record bulls, but you can shoot them siders all you want, and you need to be shooting. Even on a target where I'm doing really good, I'm still going to shoot 40 shots. Just because anytime I miss one or it doesn't go exactly where I think it should have went, then I'm over to the sider shooting practice shots, figuring out, all right, what did I miss? Was that just an errant round that leaked out a little bit, or is there a wind condition going out? Again, 9 times out of 10 when you go over there, it'll do it again. I'm like, okay, there's something going on with the wind condition that I'm not seeing. So then I know at least lay off or sit over there until shoot until it comes back to where I know where it's going to hit.
Well, especially if the conditions are really switchy.
Yes.
You're going to be shooting a ton of siders.
Yes. Yes. Now, wind flags and setting them up. I recommend for a new shooter to go ahead and start off with 4 wind flags and stands and just start off with that. May even start off with just 3. I personally use 5 wind flags and 2 wind probes. I start my first flag 5 paces from the front of my bench, and then after that it's 8 paces to each one. I want one a little bit closer to my bench because I think that very front flag is very important. That's the condition that is going to most affect the bullet path. I then have, by my second and my 4th wind flag, I have the wind probes that are used to judge the velocity of the wind. They give you direction in that they go left and right, but they don't turn. So I really like the wind probes. The flags I use have a propeller, and I have a very, very light tail on them. Some homemade tails that I made from, they're actually from trash bags, but it's really thin trash bags like a Walmart bag. Mm-hmm. And those things will move first. I'll line them up to where, now if you're by yourself, the best way to do this is attach a string to the front of my rest. I would put it on, if I'm sitting behind my rest, the front left leg. It'd be the leg close to the outside of the bench. I would tie a string around it, and then I pull it tight to the center of the target frame. And try to pull that tight, wrap it around off on the target frame. And then it makes it easier because then you can go and you can put your flags, put them up, each one of them up, touching the string, and then of course directly underneath it. And then that's going to put them perfectly in line, because what I want is when I look down range and I have both eyes open and I'm trying to look through the scope as well as look down range, my flags will be stacked, one right on top of the other one as I look at them. And then I can kind of see my wind probes off to the left a little bit. So I will basically, I shoot over my flags. Some people like to put them off to the side. I like I say, my last one is going to be pretty well in the center of the target. Our front one is closer to the left side of my rest, just to the left side. But then you got to work on getting the height and getting them positioned just right. And you can get them to where they're just, as you look down there, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just right through there. And they're all just a little bit. The 5th one's the highest one. The 1st one's the lowest one. Although that's what it looks like in my sight picture. As I'm looking down there, most of the time it's actually reverse of that.
Yeah.
And then also with that string on there, I know I've got them up as high as I can, as close to my flight path of my bullet, but not too high to where I'm going to shoot one of them.
Right. I've seen some guys where, like the tail, their sail tail flipped up.
Yep.
You know, at the last minute, and they shot through it or something like
yes,
that. But
it had them. I did it one time. We mentioned the match coming up at Wabash in Indiana where John Carper runs the matches. I was shooting at Wabash several years ago, and I went over on the sider. I'd already completed 4 rows, and I was over on the sider, and I shot, and I didn't see nothing come up on the paper. And I said, well, what in the heck? So I pulled my bolt out. I looked down my barrel. I was like, well, it ain't in the barrel. It left. So then I shot again, and it come up, and I thought, well, that's the strangest thing. Well, then I go, and I've got 1 row left, and I start going over there, and I said, well, what's that mark up there? And I looked up, and it had hit in the 3rd row 2 over. was double shot. I had one that I'd shot, but then there was one out there in La La Land, but in that square, so I ended up getting a 0 on that one. And I was like, how in the world that wind didn't blow it that far? So I'm walking down through there, and I actually hit my propeller.
Oh, nice.
A little bitty thin red propeller, and had a perfect circle hole through it. Didn't break it or anything, but it had a perfect circle hole through that propeller. And anyway, I lowered all my flags after that to make sure I didn't shoot them again. But there's always guys doing that.
Yeah.
You know, they'll shooting, where in the heck is my bullet going? And they look down there and their flags all shot. But don't laugh, because eventually you'll do it. I used to laugh at them too until I did it. So I've got my flags set up there. I got my 2 wind probes, got those up as high as I can, and I've got them stacked on there. I run them from left to right. If I'm shooting like we did at the Triple Crown, where we shot that range all week long, and I knew that the wind was going to be from left to right all day long, I will sometimes cheat my flags a little bit to this upwind, because the flags are telling you what just happened.
Yeah.
And so if you can get upwind, that's going to be more accurate of what actually is affecting you. Problem is, most places you don't know if it's going to be left or right, so that's why I put them down the center. I use the like I said, the light tails, Keeney small flags, and then the wind probes. Some guys like the sail tails. Sail tails will come more straight and stiff, and they're heavier, and they'll give you a kind of an angle indicator on the velocity of the wind. I just never have used them. I know a lot of guys use them. I've gotten used to mine. The way mine are set up and the way they work, the light tail will start first with a very light wind, and then my propeller will start turning. And then once my propeller starts getting kind of maxed out, my probe will pick it up. And so that's how I do velocity. And then if the probe goes too far, I'm probably not shooting anyway, unless it's like here where it's always over.
It's never going to quit.
So if it's never going to quit, then you just get to where you read the probe for the velocity on how far it's over. But that's how I set up my bench. There's absolutely no right way or wrong way. The rules state you just got to be on the bench. You can be as far forward on the bench as you want to. The flags, as far as ARA rules go, as long as there's in no one's way and you're not shooting them, there's not a rule against that. It's just common sense and courtesy to the guys around you to not take up too much of their room. You can use as many flags as you want, but don't overwhelm yourself with it. And I set my target. I'll level my target, and I set my target up. I turn it sideways, and I turn it sideways because with a joystick rest, I like to shoot across, and so I will get set up for a row, and I will get it to where my rest and my target and my gun are all level, so that I can just zip straight across, and the elevation will not change all the way across.
And that's not terribly hard to do because the rest has a bubble level on it.
Yeah.
And we're also using target levels.
Yes.
So it's not hard at all to get everything where it'll track left and right perfectly.
And even after I set my target, though, I don't know if maybe they're cut wrong or maybe I just don't know how to level one. I still run it across because sometimes I get up there and I was like, well, shooting out, it's low on my far left and high on the far right. Well, then I just go ahead and adjust my rest because it's not going to be off far enough on the rest unlevel to adversely affect the accuracy. I just need it to run straight across, back and forth. Because with that joystick rest, when you go up and down, because of that joystick over there, they will not track. They will not track straight up and down. But left and right, they will track perfect, and you can really run across there. When the wind condition gets right, you start putting them down there, you can really run across there. So that's how I set it up. Again, appreciate Mark with that question. Any questions y'all have, reach out to us, email us. You can email us host@straightshootingwithdanandjoseph.com. Ask us on Facebook, Instagram, any of those type of things, and we'll be glad to talk about and answer those questions. All right, Precision Shots brought to you by Kello Shooting Sports, your one-stop shop for competition shooting needs. And today we're going to go over Benchrest actions, Rimfire Benchrest actions specifically. And I will even say unlimited class, because what I'm talking about is all single shot action. I'm not going over any of the mag fed, or or for a sporter class in IR 50/50 where they have a magazine, but they're not necessarily magazine fed. All right, the first actions that they used in Rimfire Benchrest back in the day was Remington 40Xs and Winchester 52s.
I was going to say 40X I know for sure. I've only seen a couple 52s and they seem to...
And what's happened with that, the 52s are really, really good, but being a Winchester, most people now, and they're no longer in production, so most people now are collecting them.
Yeah.
And because to get them to shoot in today's environment, you're going to have to put a custom barrel on it. So nobody wants to do that to an older Winchester 52. There's nothing wrong with them. Good triggers, good action. They're as accurate as can be. But like I say, they're Winchesters and they're collectibles.
Yeah. And it's not going to be like an original collector's thing if you rebarrel it. So
we still have some of our prone shooters that shoot factory Winchesters. And I've seen some of them that have gone ahead and rebarrel them, and they're very accurate. Now, so kind of what come off of that, from there, you go to the on-shoots 54 actions and the Sewell 150. And the on-shoots 54 actions, they have the 1900 series. Basically, we're looking for the round action. They do also have a square action, a 2013, which I don't think they're actually making anymore. But some of the guys like to use those in Rimfire Benchrest. The problem with those, they're a square action and they had a bunch of screws on the bottom of them, and so they're really difficult to bed and to bed properly. They also had 4 action screws. Being a square action, it had one on each corner. So
that's how the Walters.
Yeah, a lot of the position guns are done that way. But they are difficult to bed. But a lot of in the position game nowadays, they're putting them into an aluminum stock, and they just kind of go with the bedding like that. Works well for them. Benchrest guys like to do some kind of glass and pillar bed, so prefer a nice round action with 2 or 3 at the most action screws. So that's why the on-shoots 2013 wasn't nearly as popular. The other round on-shoots actions, whether it's the older wing safety on the back of the bolt, are very good. The 1800 series, the 1900s, like 1913s, are very good, and that's the ones they use. The only knock on them is the barrel tenon is pressed and pinned. Most of the Rimfire Benchrest gunsmiths prefer to do threaded. And really, it's just a matter of what you're used to, what you're set up for, because they get set up for taking barrels off that are threaded and get all the equipment they need. Well, then now you're going to need a press. You're going to have to figure out some way to hold that thing so that you don't damage it, because they put them in there, by God, they're in there. Now, Mark Penrod's gunsmith up in Indiana, he's set up. He does these all time. Very excellent gunsmith, does good job. And like I say, he's just set up for it and used to them. So it's not as big a deal for him. A lot of the other ones are going to want to take them and thread them so that you, later on, they don't ever have to worry about pressing them off again. Now, so at first, you're going to have a little more expense as the gunsmith goes over the action and actually threading the action, because they're going to charge you for it. It's a fairly simple procedure, but the problem is if you mess up one, you just messed up $1,000 receiver. Okay, now the Sewell 150. Let me get a quick drink here. The Sewell 150 is basically the little brother to the on-shoots. It was kind of a knockoff of the on-shoots. They look a lot alike. It's just a little bit rougher. And they're no longer being made, but you do see some of those still on the Benchrest market. They had, that company had shut down, and so some of them got over to the United States, and people were able to pick them up for about $400. The thing about the Sewell, as well as the on-shoots, they both have very, very good triggers. They're also have a bolt release in the side of the action, which is nice. The only
the 52s have that funky ones.
Yeah, the 52s have a really, and so do like the Remington 37s. I've seen some guys use Remington 37s. They're really strange in getting the bolt out. And the 40X has its little button down there, which is easy enough, but that thing is always just giving trouble. It's getting sticky, and you got too much gunk in there. And so half the time on the 40X, when I take the bolt out of there, I wind up just taking my pocket knife and running it down beside the bolt and pushing the bolt stop down to bring it back. So, but the on-shoots and the Sewell have it on the side. The only knock really on the on-shoots and the Sewell is their smaller diameter. In the U.S., most of the, or just about all, the custom guns, as well as the Remington 700 in those style, are 1 inch .350,000, so an inch 350 in diameter. And so all the stocks are set up for that. The Sewell and the on-shoots are smaller diameter. So if you go and put those in a stock that's designed for a U.S. action, you're going to have a lot more bedding compound. And it'll work. You can make it work. But it just doesn't look as nice and clean. It's not. It wasn't made for it. So you're putting something in. You're putting a round peg in a square hole, and you got to go through there. But it's got all that gap around the side, so you got to fill that in. But both of them were single shots. Both of them had excellent triggers. Again, the knock is it's a right bolt, right port. And if you sit at a bench long enough and you're right-handed, really want a right bolt left port. Now their ports are opened up quite a bit to where it is fairly easy. I have even done it some to where I would still load it with my left hand, and you can drop it down over. You just still can't see quite as good. And they both feed very well, so a lot of those you can just lay it on the loading ramp and use the bolt to push it forward and close it. So those are the Sewells, and the on-shoots are both very accurate. I've had a couple, 3 really good Sewells in my time. I've had a good on-shoots, and I've had a good 40X. Now 40X, like I say, another thing that's down on it is that bolt release. And that bolt release does get to be a pain in the butt. The other thing that some of their guys don't like about the 40X is they are going to have a bigger barrel tenon. The barrel tenon on a 40X is 1.062 and 16 TPI. A lot of the Benchrest guys like to use a 900 straight barrel. Now some of them have done 850 straight or even up to a 920 straight, but those will not go on a 40X because the hole's bigger than an inch. So you either got to do a bushing or something else. And so that was, even though I have not seen it adversely affect accuracy. 40X's shot just as good as anything else, but you're going to have a barrel with a bigger barrel tenon. So you're going to have to go with, from Schillen, they're going to make a number 7. Number 7 starts off an inch 250 and slowly tapers to about 920. They've got 3 different number 7s. They just depends on what diameter ends up at the muzzle, but around anywhere between 880 and 920 at the muzzle. They make a R0 and an R5. R stands for radius, so they're going to have an inch 250 section for about 4 inches, and then it's going to do a quick radius down to where the remainder of the barrel is going to be straight. Either for an R5, it's going to be 875 diameter, the rest of the length, and 920 is going to be about 900 to 920, but it's going to be straight the rest of the way. But that gives you that bigger barrel tenon so that it works on a 40X. Now, they will also work on all the custom actions. All the custom actions, though, are 750 diameter, and you can put the bigger barrel on there. But most of the guys have gotten used to doing 900s. They're set up with tuners. They think they know how to tune them better, more comfortable with them. The 900 will work just perfect on a 750 diameter barrel tenon. Most gunsmiths don't really want to go less than an 850 diameter barrel on a 750 barrel tenon, just so it has a little bit of shoulder to go up against the action there. So 850 is about as small as they'll go on those, but that honestly, I've never seen anybody really want anything any smaller than that.
Yeah. Do you think that the straight barrels are easier to tune, or have you seen?
I don't think they are.
Anything that
I mean, guys just gotten used to them, and that's what they always have
Yeah.
and always used, and so they think, well, it's going to be right around in here. But I disagree with them on that point because, as you've seen too, as we found tuning in the Ely test tunnel, you never know until you shoot that thing. I don't care what contour it is. I've seen them all over the place on every contour, and I've seen two made back to back exactly the same, and they're not anywhere near the same setting. So don't understand. It's just what I see. All right, so we had the Remington. So the factory actions were the Remington 40X, the Sewell 150, the Anschutz 54, and the Winchester 52. The big reason most people go to a custom action, there's a couple different reasons, is number one typically is trigger. The 40X, you can get aftermarket triggers on it, but you do not want to use the factory 40X trigger. It's not going to be good enough. The Sewell 150 or the Anschutz 54 do have very good triggers on them. You're going to be all right with that. The Winchester 52, a lot of the guys back then used to use Carl Kenyon, did some triggers that had some awesome triggers that they would put on those. The other thing that none of those are going to have, though, is a left port. And if you're right-handed, you shoot Benchrest long enough, you're going to want a left port. Another thing that a lot of people really like is having a trigger hanger. None of those factory guns are going to have a trigger hanger. Like all the custom guns are going to have a trigger hanger. A trigger hanger is a couple advantages. If you do a glue-in type bedding, then with a trigger hanger, you can take the trigger guard off and still drop that trigger out and change the trigger without actually having to pop the thing out of it. Now, nowadays, most people do not glue them in. Everybody beds them, but they just screw them in to where you can take them out. So that's not that big a deal. One of the other advantages, though, of a trigger hanger is you can play with the timing of the trigger, meaning you can move that trigger slightly forward or slightly back to make it compress the firing pin spring either more or less. Now, the way Stiller makes his, it's not perfectly centered in the middle of the trigger hanger, so you turn one direction, you've got more firing pin pressure. You turn it the other way, and you've got less. So you've kind of got two settings already built in.
Yeah.
But they just have the pins there.
The 52s, I don't know if it's the stock trigger. I've only tested a couple of them, and the trigger was like this wide. Like
they are very wide.
It's a freaking huge trigger.
Yeah. A really fat trigger shoe on those. Okay, then again, the 40X, another knock on it, like we were talking about earlier, the barrel tenon is going to need to be an inch 062 as to where the customs are 750, so you're going to be able to use a smaller barrel on the custom actions. Now, you can put a barrel tenon, or not a barrel tenon, a adapter on or bushing on the 40X to make it go down to that smaller. Okay, so that's the main reason why people go with a custom action right there. Also, the other thing is they're trued up and they're perfect. 40Xs are not.
Yeah.
They are not. I mean, they're just mass produced, and so the front of the action is not going to be perfectly trued up with the bore of the barrel, as to where the custom actions, everything's going to be blueprinted, perfectly aligned, and that the lugs are going to be making good contact, and all that's going to be secure. The gunsmith is going to have to do little to no work on a custom action as opposed to a factory gun. Now, once a gunsmith goes over one of those factory actions, you're good to go from there on out, but you're still going to have to pay them a little extra that first time through. Now, some of the older custom actions that you'll probably hear about or you may see on occasion, Swindlehurst, Kelbley's up in Ohio, big Benchrest guys, they made the Swindlehurst for a while. The Swindlehurst had that big barrel tenon, which was a little bit of a knock on it, and it has a huge V trough in the top to load it. You can load it from either side because it's just a big V trough, and you can load that thing from across the room. I swear, those things feed better than anything I've ever seen. And we've still got guys on the PSL circuit and ARA circuit, IR 5050, that are still using those and like them.
Don't want to get rid of them.
Kelbley does not make them anymore, and they were very expensive at the time. They were about $1,600, and they haven't made them, I think, in 10 or so years. So that was really, I mean, that would still be the most expensive action out there, and that was several years ago. but they were very good guns, very good actions. The only knock that some people had on them was that the loading port was so big that they thought it weakened the action, because it is huge.
Oh, like taking that much metal.
Yeah, you
out
just
of
took
it.
out so much metal, and you got that big gap. And I mean, because I almost took half the top of it out. But I've seen so many of them shoot so good that I don't know. Maybe you just got to make sure you get a better bedding job done, and to where it done. My mind is, if you've got a good solid bedding underneath, then it should be fine. But anyway, that was some things that people didn't like about those. But Swindlehurst, you'll still see them out there and around. Time Precision. Now, the Time Precision, they took and made one that was a lot like a centerfire. A centerfire bolt is going to have the locking lugs on the front of the action, so that when you close that bolt, those two locking lugs on the front of the action are going to turn and lock up right directly behind the round that you're going to shoot. Now, the rimfires are not done that way, because the rimfire round is so small. When you put the locking lugs up front, there's no room for a loading ramp. So there's not a loading ramp. You look into the Time, and there's no,
just open chamber.
You have to put the bullet straight into the barrel, because there's nothing there to lay it on to go into. Now, some guys like that anyway, and they would go ahead and do it because they thought it was more accurate to have that thing lock up right behind the barrel. The other downfall is typically the ejector. Okay, so you've got your bolt. The bolt has two little extractors. The extractors pull the spent case out of the barrel. The ejector typically is on the loading ramp, as a little piece of metal sticking up. Will hit that round and flick it out of the action, get it out of the way.
But no loading ramp.
If there's no loading ramp, there's no ejector.
Yeah.
So then when you open that bolt and you pull it off,
Just falls.
No, it just hangs on the end of the bolt. So you got to pull it off. You got to pull it off yourself and throw it down. So they were just a real pain in the rear. Richard Gorham would shoot one, and unless you knew what he was shooting, you would know everything different. He's got it down so good. He'd have that extra round in his left hand. He would open the bolt, slide it out, put the new round in the barrel, reach up, grab that other brass, and flick it off and close the bolt. And he could do that just boom, 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 just as fast as I can do one of the regular ones. Now, that's kind of one different thing, too. We're talking about that front lockup. That's another thing that's a little bit different about the various actions. You've got front lockup, you've got mid lockup, and you've got rear lockup. Most 22 guns are rear lockups, to where the handle is the locking lug. And a lot of the cheaper 22 guns only have one lug, really, and it's the bolt handle. And that's the only thing that locks up when you close it down. The thought is behind that, all the centerfires are front lockup. When you close the bolt, essentially what that is doing is that's elongating the action. That's pushing the barrel away from the action and elongating that. And because you have that port in the action, it's going to make it flex. Well, on a front lockup, the lockup is in front of that port, so it's not going to, it's just going to pull straight back. Well, with a mid lockup, like the Remington 40X is a mid lockup, those lugs are going to be just behind that port. So when you close that action is going to flex away from that port where the metal's cut out and it's made it weaker. By doing a rear lockup, you're moving those lugs even further back, making it flex even more. And some people think that that's going to be a problem. I say potentially it's going to be a problem, but 75-80% of the actions out there are rear lockup, and they shoot extremely well. So either they have it figured out, or it's not as big a problem as we thought it was going to be. And the Winchester 52 is a rear lockup. The 40X is a mid lockup. So anything that was based on the 40X is going to be a mid. That is also why they have a bigger barrel tenon, because when they cut those lugs out of the action for that thing to lock up, they have to come in with their tool from the front of the action to get in there to cut that. Well, that's as small of a hole as they can get in there and accurately do that. They can't make it 750 because they got to come in from the front. Now, rear lockup, they can come in from the back. So they can make the barrel tin in any size they want. All right, so then you have what you're going to hear people call an old turbo or a flash turbo. Based on the 52, rear lockup was made by Flash Ebert in Odessa, Texas. It was called a turbo because he had a CNC shop, and Midland, Odessa, Texas is kind of right in the middle of the oil patch. And he specialized on turbos for diesel engines. And so that's why he called it a turbo. He got older, eventually passed away. His widow sold that to Diorio up in Virginia, and Diorio's doing those now, and it has the turbo brand and is making those. Old turbo is fine. There's nothing wrong with them. A lot of them, they were really the first kind of custom action that really took off, and a lot of people liked them. You get left port, you can get that 750 barrel tenon, the 700 style trigger on it, and a bolt release on the side of the action. One of the other ones that came on long after that was a Hall action. Alan Hall doesn't make those anymore. He had his own very, very nicely made. I mean, he put his heart and soul in every one of those. The only knock you ever heard from anybody on them, and Alan Hall will argue with them to the day that they're wrong, and people very well could be, but sometimes perception is reality. Most of these other actions hit the firing pin hits the round extremely hard. Alan wanted quick and fast, so light but quick, and so it was a smaller indent, had a better lock time, but Benchrest lock time doesn't matter because we're on a fixed rest, and had a little round firing pin and would quick and hit it, and some people didn't think it hit it hard enough. Alan thought he was right, so that's the way he made them, but that was the only thing you'd see. They had a 11 or 3/8 dovetail built into the top, so you didn't need any bases, which were nice. But the Hall actions are still, you'll still see a few of them out there and around, but Alan Hall in Alabama is not making those any longer. Then you have the Falcon, which is another one based on the 52. The Falcon came out, and Leonard Beatty made those, and he decided he wanted to put some stuff in there to make a lot of things adjustable, which sounded really cool. But the problem was, that's just another place something could go wrong.
Yeah.
If it's adjusting, then that means it can come loose.
It's the same way on, like, not all, but some of the modern, like, 3-position rifles that I see. They're kind of over-engineered, which is a cool feature if you're into that, but it's more stuff to clean, more stuff to get dirty also, and just more mechanism and mechanics to possibly malfunction or have an issue with.
Yes, exactly, and that's what people found with the Falcon. He's not making those anymore, but we still do see some of those around. Another one is the X3 10X Shooting Supplies up in Pennsylvania. I don't think they're making them anymore. I haven't been able to get in touch with them. Still see quite a few of them based on the Winchester 52 again, so they're going to be a lot like a turbo, and they're good. They're good too. You can get the left port. They've got the 750 barrel 10-in rear lockup, got the bolt release on the side of the action. Use a Remington 700 trigger, and you've got your trigger hanger on those. Then we've got the ones that Jerry Stiller made. Jerry Stiller made, at first he made the Copperhead because he wanted the mid lockup. He didn't prefer the rear lockup, but he wanted the mid lockup. And then with the Copperhead, what was kind of unique about it is it had 2 firing pins. About that time, people started talking about firing pin striking either at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock, meaning when it hits the brass, it's always been traditional that it hits the brass on the top at 12 o'clock position. Well, it was speculated that when you put the round in there, the powder is going to lay down because of gravity on the bottom, so you want to hit it from the bottom and ignite it from underneath. I will say we tested this extensively myself in the tunnel, and I can't find any difference. It's not any worse, but I can't say that it's any better either. But
well, even then, because like I'll get light. I call them light strikes. I don't actually know why they don't go off.
right,
But you just rotate it. It's still on the top.
yeah,
Just a different position. But if you rotate it, 180 degrees, it's now your light strike is on the bottom, your new strike is on the top again, and it goes off every single time on the second one. So I don't know. I mean,
yep.
you're rotating it, so if the theory is that the powder falls down, then it goes off again when you hit it on the top. Then
yep.
there goes that.
Yep. And they know it goes off. I mean, but it just thought that it would better ignition, burns more thoroughly. But anyway, we did so much as even taking one and mounting and holding it by the barrel and turning it to where we fired one in regular, and then we loosened it and we turned it 90 degrees to where the trigger's sticking straight out to the right.
Yeah.
And we loaded it up, and then we turned it upside down. It was a real pain to load it, and then we turned it again to get it over on the other side and did it all the way around. Like I say, we never could see that it was better, but it definitely was not worse. So all the custom actions now, you're going to get one that's going to have a 6 o'clock firing pin. The Copperhead hit both, though. It hit 6 and 12. Now, there was a little bit, but Jerry had that figured out. You want both of them to hit at the same time, but Jerry got that fixed. The only kind of downfall was because the pins were depressing the brass in two places. They needed a stronger firing pin spring. So if you had a stronger firing pin spring, then that means the bolt lift was more difficult. And so he wound up there at the end making the Copperheads with just one firing pin and putting in a lighter spring, just because, again, we didn't see that it helped any to have two, and it created a tougher bolt open. Then he also did the Myers action. Bill Myers designed. We worked with Jerry on this, Stiller, and got these made, and these were a lot like a Swindlehurst. Had a really big, large port in them like a Swindlehurst. Had that big barrel tenon. Copperhead had the big barrel tenon, and they work very well too. But those are a couple more that you're going to hear about that are not usually around much anymore. ULA, Ultralight Arms, had some for a while. But be honest, I don't have a lot of experience of those, but ULA I have seen. Nowadays, if you want to go today and buy one, you're either going to buy one from Whole Shot Arms, which is Jerry Stiller, his 2500X or Trident, or you're going to buy one from Anthony Diorio, Diorio Manufacturing, one of the turbos. Now, they do both have a 2-lug and a 3-lug, meaning the lugs on the bolt. It's always been traditional on ours that it'd be two. There'd be basically one on top, one on bottom, or basically 180 degrees apart. Centerfire World loves a 3-lug action just because as it locks up, it makes it more proportional, spreading out that pressure. So thought it would be better in Rimfire.
Well, there's not enough. I don't know if there's enough.
Yeah, I don't think there is. We haven't seen, again, that's another one of them things I have not seen that it makes any difference. It's not any worse, but I cannot say that it's any better.
I mean, I don't think 22 it's not a big enough round that you would really gain anything from having a 3-lug.
Yeah, that's my opinion as well. The only downside to me of a 3-lug over a 2-lug is now you've got 3 friction surfaces, so that when you open that bolt, you've got 3 friction surfaces giving you resistance. It makes it a little more difficult to open. It's also a shorter bolt throw, so the position guys like that.
Yeah.
Because they wanted a shorter throw because
you don't have to open it as far.
And they can stay down in position. So a lot of them will deal with and work with, because you can work on that bolt open and get it to where it's smoother and work that out where it's just like silk, and so it's not as big an issue, and they like that shorter bolt throw and bringing it back. So Stiller makes with the Whole Shot Arms, makes the 2500X and the Trident. They're identical, except Trident's 3-lug, 2500X is 2-lug.
Yep.
Diorio with a turbo, same thing, 2-lug, 3-lug. A couple other things that and I think Diorio's even starting to do this. Stiller is added on. Stiller will melanite some of the surfaces, which is just a process, and I'll get him on here sometime to explain that. But basically, it means you're really not going to ever wear that thing out.
Yeah.
It's going to be tougher, but it's not necessarily harder. It's not going to be harder on anything. It's just going to last longer, and it makes everything smoother. He also, another thing that he does that I don't think, I'm not sure if Diorio does this or not, but Stiller precision grinds the outside diameter of the action. So that thing is truly 1'350" the full length. It's perfect. And he puts a lot of time in on that. It's going to have the 750 barrel tenon. You can do left or right bolt. Everything right now is all right bolt. I do not know of anybody making a left bolt action to make a truly left-handed gun. Another thing Stiller has done, he's got a really small screw underneath the loading ramp to where you can adjust that loading ramp height to get it to where it's perfect, so that if you want to load by allowing the bolt to push the round straight in, that you can adjust
instead
that
of
and get it instead of feeding it yourself, and you can get that to where it loads in nice and smooth. Well, I said earlier how he had the pins situated on the trigger hanger to where you can just flip that around and have a different timing for the trigger. It's largely what we work with. We work with some turbos too, but we largely work with the ones from Jerry Stiller. And
yeah, and that's a lot of guys that call in wanting to know, you know, the build process or where to start. They just, I'll explain everything, and then I don't know if I'm getting too in detail about it, or it's just so many options that they just get overwhelmed, and they finally just kind of say, well, what's everybody else doing?
right.
2500s with 900 shillings.
Yep.
That's it. And, you know, for whatever reason, I think the 900 is just it's a good size and a good barrel.
Yep.
And so that's what everybody's getting. I couldn't go into detail about why that one's better than an 850 or a 920.
Just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait. Stiller also, through us, Kello Shooting Sports, we've got all the pieces and parts for those things, so you can get extractors,
C-clip,
the C-clip to put it on, firing pin springs, all that's readily available. I'm not sure from Diorio on the extractors and whatnot. I know firing pins, which main thing you're ever going to change on one's a firing pin spring. Firing pin springs for the Diorios are readily available. That's not a problem getting any of those. And honestly, I think you could probably get the other parts directly from Diorio. The Stiller also makes some Picatinny rails. So if you're into the Picatinny rail and want those, he's got those for them. And he also has some MOA built in those if you're doing anything long range. Get you one that's got, I believe the top one has 20 MOA built into it. Another cool thing that he's done, he's also got a pick rail that only attaches to the front action screws, but still gives you a full length, not the front action screws, the front scope base screw holes. Some people don't like putting two rings on a scope and having that scope go across the open port, because like I said earlier, when you close the bolt, that action wants to flex, and it flexes away from that weakness in the action caused by the port opening. Well, if you got a scope on it, now you're putting that scope in a bind.
Yeah.
So that's why you see some people have two sets of rings
on the
front of the scope. So to get around that to where you can put rings on a scope in the traditional manner, one in the front, one in the back, Stiller got that pick rail, and it'll just attach to the scope base in the front, those two holes in the front. So you can still get that good and secure and whatnot. He also makes a rail that you can put just on the front if you want to use just two scope rings in front of the target turret on the scope. So very good action. We do a lot with them. That's what I'm shooting now. We got 3 guns that I shoot, and all of them are 2500 X's. Like I say, nothing wrong with the Trident, and I also see a lot of guys out on the circuit still shooting the X3s, doing extremely well, and shooting the turbos and doing extremely well. Again, if you got any other questions on that, email us host@straightshootingwithdanandjoseph.com. I think I about covered everything on the actions there. Basically, if you want a new action right now and you want to go buy one, you got to buy a turbo or a 2500X or Trident from Whole Shot Arms with Jerry Stiller. Those are the only two left. You can pick up the other ones used, and that's perfectly acceptable. You can certainly do that. Just always remember, when you're buying a used gun, you're probably going to have to put a new barrel on it, which is not at the end of the world. You can certainly do that, and you're just going to be looking at another $600 or $700. As long as you buy it at the right price, that may be the way to go. Yeah. There'll be some deals out there on used guns that are set up, or if you really want to know you're getting a good gun, go up to the guy that just won the match, pay him a little premium, but hey, it's already all been worked out. You know it's good, and you ain't got to do all that work, and sometimes it's worth it. I've seen them go for as much as $7,000 or $3,000
the gun
rifle.
That won the match.
And gun, actually, it was Bill Myers' gun. I sold it. Bill Myers, when he passed away, his personal gun we sold for $7,500 to somebody.
Dang.
So, because they knew it was an excellent gun,
yeah.
and it was a beautiful gun, and it was a high dollar, and in fact, it was his and his name on it, and they were willing to pay for it. So, if they're willing to pay for it, go for
it. Everything's for sale for the right price.
That's exactly right. All right, very good. All right, just got just a few minutes here. Going to finish up with bleeding off with Joseph as he gets ready to go to Oklahoma.
Yep. This will be a fun match. It'll be, just looking at these stages, it'll be kind of difficult. But they have a little bit of everything. There's some kind of short and sweet stages where it's low round count. Won't take you very long. It's not a huge puzzle trying to figure out, during the walkthrough and everything. And on the other side of that, there's also some 30, 31, 32 round memory stages. And so there's a little bit of everything. Just looking at it, what I've been working on the last couple nights, just like in my living room, is watching that dot. I mean, I think this is going to be one that I'm going to have to slow down my feet a little bit just to make sure my hits are there. And if I give up a little bit of time, as long as my score is good, I think I'll be doing okay. I'm not going to win it, but for me personally, I think that's what I'm going to have to do to be somewhat happy with my results, is give up a little bit of time and make up for it on my hits.
Well, that's good, though. You moved on, because used to the goal was no DQs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've come maybe one step past that. I don't have to try as hard to not get DQ'd now. But I think this will be a good match. I'll report back on it once we get back. It's a 10-stage match. It might be 50-50, between the long courses and the short courses of fire. We've got a sponsored stage. It looks
with Ely ammunition.
Yeah, Ely has a sponsored stage, and it's actually one of the more difficult ones. It's got a lot of ports that you have to. Basically, every target has its own port that you have to shoot through, and they don't really line up together. So it's going to be a lot of side steps and shuffle footing to get around, shooting through all the ports. But I think it'll be fun. It looks. I mean, looking at it on paper, it's hard to tell exactly what it'll look like, but it looks like a fairly,
And that's honestly, next time we have Blake Lyles from 415 training on here, that's one thing I want to do. Say, all right, we've gone over this. What are you looking at? What are you doing? Can you tell me how you prepare for these matches and what you're looking at?
Well, and I'm sure Blake is way better at it than I am. I'm just trying to imagine, like, I'm putting myself right in the middle of that box. And Steve was asking me too. He's like, so on this one, what would you do? I'm like, well, you never really know until you actually look at it there in front of you. But just going off of what's on the sheet, you can start here. Like for this one, you have to start on the barrel. I think there's a few different starting positions. Like there's multiple unloaded stages where you have to start unloaded. One of them, it's on the barrel and like your hand has to be touching it. The other one, it's actually holstered and unloaded, which I mean, doesn't really add anything. You just have a little bit of slower draw because you got to rack that round in there. But
yep.
I think it'll be. It won't be like frustratingly hard. It'll be, hard enough to where it's still kind of fun.
All right, this is the Oklahoma Section Championship at the Oklahoma City Gun Club in Arcadia, Oklahoma. And I'll let you pronounce that road there.
Hiwassee?
Hiwassee.
I think so.
24507 North Hiwassee Road, Arcadia, Oklahoma. Match dates June 19th and 20th. Come by and see Steve and Joseph.
Yeah,
say hello.
Me and Steve both shoot Friday, so Saturday we'll just be hanging out. If you need any ammo or you want to look at some of the stuff that we have for sale or some of the stuff that's listed on our website, you can come take a look at it. We'll have quite a few things on display there.
Got the bull guns. Are going to be a couple bull guns to display.
Yeah, those are brand new. If you've been seeing them, seeing the advertising and stuff, and you want to get your hands on it, you can come and actually feel it. We'll have a couple different models there, some sides, and like I said, the RE ammo and stuff like that. We'll have all of it displayed there. If you want to look at it, get some hands-on
That's right.
experience with it, or just see what it's about, we can hook you up.
All right. Well, good luck at the match this weekend. All right. That does it for episode 11. Tune in next time as we have a range report and match report from that Oklahoma sectional, as well as the Rocky Mountain Regional NRL 22 match sponsored by Ely as well. We'll have a report back on that. And we're going to have Jim Cannon back on. We're going out to Jim Cannon to his match, and so we're going to get him on to talk some more NRL 22. Going to talk about building. Last time we talked about building a starter gun for their base class. This time we're going to talk about building an all-out race gun for NRL 22 with Jim Cannon. So tune in for that. We'll have more reports, more scores for you as well. Again, remember we have a Straight Shooting with DanandJoseph.com. Our Instagram is Straight Shooting with D&J. Our Facebook post. You can email us host@straightshootingwithdanandjoseph.com. Joseph's private Instagram is psphotog, and mine is Shooting Accuracy. So we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your questions and comments, and we look forward to seeing you at the range.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in.